What is going on, everyone? We are back in our Bears franchise in Madden 17. We have reached the end of season number 3, and season 3 ended in the best possible way as we won the Super Bowl, defeating the Cincinnati Bengals. Big win for the franchise, and now we head into our offseason here with the pressure of trying to repeat. So we start here by taking a look back at this season. A weird season this year, I gotta say. A lot of injuries we had to deal with. Tony Romo ends up leading us with 2,300 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Dudley, minimal playing time, just under 1,000, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Mike Glennon got a little bit of playing time, 287, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But you see here, even Tony Romo missed some games. He only played 14. Dudley only played 6. And then Mike Glennon plays 3, so a lot of time missed by our quarterbacks. But when you combine everything together, it's not a bad season as we still end up with over 3,000 yards passing and just about 25 total touchdowns. The running backs, Melvin Gordon had, you wouldn't think he had such a great season, but he just misses out on 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns. He actually ends up second in the rushing total in the league. Giovanni Bernard, the only guy to finish in front of him. Marquise Forston, I was disappointed in the rookie this year, 2.6 yards per carry. I know he is a power back, short yardage guy, but I would expect that to be a little bit better, so we might explore or option at least keep our eyes open when it comes to power backs in the offseason. And then Jeremy Langford, 3 touchdowns this season in his minimal work. On to the receivers, Alshon Jeffrey leads us by a wide margin with 67 catches. The next guy is Tyreek Hill at 48. Daniel Braverman, 41, which Daniel Braverman kind of fell apart, or didn't fall apart, but he fell to the wayside as Tyreek Hill emerged and took over his starting slot position. Would love to get Daniel Braverman back on the field. We'll talk about that more in a future episode as we get into the offseason. But then you see Cameron Brate, some of these other guys. Kevin White was non-existent all season. You see in the regular season, he had 335 yards, came alive in the playoffs. He was a big part of this team. But you see the injuries here as well. Higbee only played 9 games. Kevin White only played 10. He missed a good chunk. Braverman only played 14. He got hurt. And then Tyreek Hill, 916 yards receiving, only played 9 games. Imagine if he had played all 16, he would have blown all of our receivers out of the water. 7 touchdowns, 916 yards, 101 yards per game. Very good year for him. Now on to the defense. It is 113 tackles for Adrian Amos. No one else is over 100. Voorhees Greg had 95 tackles for loss. It's 14 for Pernell McPhee. Adrian Amos with 13. Trevathan tied with 13 as well. Leonard Floyd with 12. Leonard Floyd is going to lead us in sacks with 14.5. Rashid Hageman behind him with 12.5, and then McPhee with 9. Cecil Rudd, the second year at right end, ends at 8.5, and then Jamison Salisbury with 5.5. Interceptions, Kyle Fuller leads us again. This year he has 6. Malik Craig with 4. Actually gets all of those in the first half of the season. He went down with an injury about the middle part of the season. Never really recovered. Did not play too well in the second half of the season, at least causing turnovers. And then you see the rest of the interceptions there. And then we're going to have pass deflections. This one, Kyle Fuller, 14. 2 times the next guy, Tony Lippett with 7. Quentin Rollins with 5. Forced fumbles, it's going to be 2 from a trio. Voorhees Greg, it's going to be Leonard Floyd and Pernell McPhee. And then recoveries, it's going to be 2 for Trevathan. And then a few guys there with 1. Interesting enough, there's some weird that glitched with the kicking stats. We lost them at some point in the season. Josh Lambo looks like he didn't do anything this season. Pat O'Donnell, 46.3 yards per punt this year. Tyreek Hill, 619 yards receiving. Craig with 458. Langford with 232. Craig handled most of those duties, and that's actually what got him hurt, I do believe, as he was in place for Tyreek Hill, who was out with an injury. Now on to league leaders. Here we are going to have quarterback Phillip Rivers leads the league in yardage. Aaron Rodgers right behind him. Aaron Rodgers always seems to be right towards the top of this list. Touchdown passes, it is going to be Rivers as well, 33. Now interesting here, as we already know, Russell Wilson won MVP. His numbers not anything great, so I'm actually surprised he ended up being named MVP. Alex Smith, 19 interceptions. Bryce Petty and Flacco with 18, and Drew Brees with 17. That's an unusually high number for him. Marcus Mariota and Winston also with 16. Giovanni Bernard, as I said, leads the league in rushing. Devontae Freeman finishes 3rd, right behind Melvin Gordon. Touchdown lead goes to Michael Payton with 14. Jeremy Hill, Zach Center, and Giovanni Bernard with 12. Moving on to the receivers now. Jordy Nelson and Odell Beckham Jr., the only 2 guys with over 100 catches. Edelman and Allen right behind them. Gronkowski with 93 as well. Receiving yards is going to go to Keenan Allen, though, 1,400. Odell Beckham just short of 1,400, and then Michael Floyd just short of 1,300. Then looking at the touchdowns, the leader here is going to be Keenan Allen as well with 13. Beckham again in second with 12. And then Michael Michael Floyd and Demaryius Thomas with 11. Now moving on to the defense, it's going to be McKinney leading the league with 149 tackles, one ahead of Navarro Bowman. Tackles for loss is going to go to Linval Joseph, 28. That is a lot of tackles for loss. Brandon Williams finishes second with 24. Sacks, it is going to be 23.5 for Brandon Graham. That is an impressive total right there. Well in the lead for the sacks. Interceptions going to be 7 for Marcus Peters and Ray Maliuga. Richard Sherman with 6. Darrell Rivas with 6. Obviously, we know Kyle Fuller should be on that list, so as we need to now, we look at just the NFC. You see Leonard Floyd finishes third in sacks, and then Kyle Fuller ties for the league with Richard Sherman at 6 interceptions apiece. Now we'll take a look at the team stats. We finished 28th in offensive yards. No real surprise there. Second in defense again. No surprise there. The defense very good this season. 18th in points scored. That's a little bit better. And then points against, I do believe, is going to be, nope, that's going to be third. I thought that was second as well, but that is going to be third. So a very good showing yet again from the defense. Now on to NFL awards, and I already told you Russell Wilson is the MVP. He finishes ahead of Phillip Rivers, who I feel should have won the MVP. Drew Brees finishes a surprise third, considering he had, 17 interceptions. Adam Gase finishes first for head coach of the year. Trey finishes fourth. Russell Wilson grabs offensive player of the year over Eli Manning and Cam Newton. Brandon Graham, no surprise, wins defensive player of the year with his 23.5 sacks. The offensive rookie of the year is going to go to Israel Law, and I do believe we have a Bear on this list. It is going to be Forston, but with his season, he's going to end up finishing 8th. Defensive player of the year goes to the Packers, Fenderson. And then, do we have anyone here? Malik Craig could have been up there, but the injury, and he kind of fell off there, but his 4 interceptions is going to earn him a spot on the list. Russell Wilson gets best quarterback. Melvin Gordon wins best running back over Devontae Freeman, so that's 2 years in a row. Odell Beckham wins best wide receiver. Zach Martin, best lineman. On the offense, at least, Lyle Collins finishes 4th. Brandon Graham wins best defensive lineman. Best linebacker is going to go to, I do believe, Alec Ogletree. So the Rams have a couple guys there at the top of the list. Leonard Floyd going to finish 4th. And then Cam Chancellor wins best DB. Kyle Fuller finishing 3rd. Hopefully, we get him that best DB at some point. And then Robbie Gould is going to be your best kicker. Now, quickly through the AFC, Blake Bortles is your offensive player of the year. That's a big name to see, a big surprise, I should say, to see McKinney wins best defensive player. Dylan Craig, no surprise, winning offensive rookie of the year. Metropolis is going to win best defensive rookie. Phillip Rivers, that's what we need to see there. Best quarterback for Phillip Rivers. He gets at least some recognition. Giovanni Bernard, best running back. Keenan Allen, best wide receiver. Joe Thomas, best offensive lineman. J.J. Watt, best defensive lineman. Justin Houston, best linebacker. Chris Harris, best DB. And finally, Dustin Hopkins, best kicker. So those are the NFL awards. Now it's time to award our awards, the team awards. These are the ones that we decide on. And as always, it's going to be most improved player, offensive player of the year, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, and then finally MVP, which is going to be based on the weekly awards that we handed out throughout the season, the regular season, and the playoffs. We had a couple extra games, a couple extra votes getting cast, considering we made it all the way to the Super Bowl. But we're going to start things off with most improved player. On this one, I had a couple of options, but ultimately, this one was kind of easy. Here you see the past winners here, Tony Lippett, Kyle Fuller. So who's it going to be this year? Tyreek Hill. Now, I thought about giving this to only a player that was on the Bears last year, but after thinking about it, I mean, Tyreek Hill, this was his first season. He's in his 3rd year, never played before, and in his first year, 916 yards, 7 touchdowns. But on top of that, the dude has 619 yards returning kicks and 473 yards returning punts, so over 2,000 yards. How can you not give this guy most improved, at least throughout that course of the season? Next up is Rookie of the Year, and this one was very easy. You see the past winners, Leonard Floyd, Zach Dudley. I'm giving this one to Malik Craig. Really, the only other rookie that got consistent playing time was our center, and I'm not going to give it to the center, so Malik Craig is going to earn that. 4 interceptions for him, 54 tackles. Did miss some time with the injury, but still, he ended up, by the end of the season, starting opposite Kyle Fuller, so this guy, obviously, a lot of potential. 6'4", huge corner. Next up is going to be Offensive Player of the Year, and this one came down to really 2 guys, Melvin Gordon, Tyreek Hill. You see the past winners. Melvin Gordon won it last year, but after thinking about it, again, how can you not deny Tyreek Hill? I just talked about it, 2,000 total yards. Now, in terms of just offense, yes, still just 916, but he did that in just 9 games. The man was a monster. He absolutely carried this team in the second half of the season. And actually, if you remember way back to week 1, he won us the game in week 1, so a huge impact on this team and this season. So he will be Offensive Player of the Year. Next up is going to be Defensive Player of the Year, and this one was probably the hardest award to hand out. As you see, past seasons, It came down to 3 guys, Kyle Fuller, Leonard Floyd, and Adrian Amos, but ultimately I'm going to give it to Kyle Fuller because after looking closer at the stats, he had a better year than last year. Goes from 64 to 86 tackles, 5 tackles for loss. The interceptions go down a little bit, but still, he led the NFC in interceptions, so I got to give it to Kyle Fuller for the second year in a row. And now we finish things off with the final award, Team MVP. Last year, Melvin Gordon. First year was Alshon Jeffrey. Let's take a look at the results from the year. A lot of guys. You see how weird of a season it was? Look at how many guys won it at least one time. Tony Romo wins it twice, and then Tyreek Hill wins it 4 times. And again, it's going to sound like a broken record. I mean, I got to give it to Tyreek Hill. This guy, there's not much more I can say. Over 2,000 yards of total offense, 7 touchdowns, only played 9 games, but again, so instrumental in our season. With the injuries we had to quarterback, when he came back from his injury, he was that guy that was the spark plug for that offense to get us going, moving that ball down the field with his speed, and ultimately he will be our team MVP. So that is Season 3. We now move on to the offseason, and this is the most exciting time in franchise mode. It's the offseason. We start things off with re-signing players. And before we get there, first, the retirees. And at the top of the list is the big man, Tony Romo. Now, I was slightly upset on this one. I mean, obviously, I'm pumped to get his money off the books, but I was hoping to trade him in the offseason, so a little bit bummed to see him retire. Drew Brees is going to retire. Matt Forte retires. Darrelle Revis retires, so some big names going. Stevie Johnson, Terrell Suggs, Kyle Williams, Jordy Nelson is going to retire. Nice that we don't have to face him anymore. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie's going to go. Some big names taking a seat. Carson Palmer, Jay Cutler. Oh, poor Jay Cutler. I'm fine seeing him go. But at least we only have one retiree. I thought maybe we could have a couple other guys going. But now let's take a quick look before we finish at who is up for re-signing. We got Kevin White, Eddie Goldman at the top, 83 overall apiece. Then we're going to have, Adrian Amos as well in 83. You're going to see as we go through this, we got some big names at the top here. Quentin Rollins and Tony Lippett are up for re-signing. Jarrell Freeman is going to be up. Jeremy Langford, 77 overalls. Tyreek Hill, you know we're re-signing that guy. Marquise Lee is up. Deion Lofton, Daniel Braverman, Francis Zellner. Some of these guys we picked up mid-season, late in the season, Darren Waller, Bryce Callahan, Stephen Jordan, Bobby Massey, David Johnson, and then Trey Utek. So everyone over a 70. A lot of guys up for re-signing. I can tell you right now, we cannot bring everyone back. We do not have the cap space this season. I think we're going to start out with something around $20 million if I'm not mistaken, and that is in no way enough to go around even to maybe 3 or 4 of those guys at the top of that list. So we're going to have to make some really tough decisions. I mean, as far as cornerback, we're probably going to have to get rid of either Quentin Rollins or Tony Lippett, if not both of them, because we also have to think about, are they going to want to re-sign with us? Because sometimes this game just kind of decides that a player just doesn't want to come back, so we might have that to deal with. So we're going to try and navigate the offseason as best we can, taking our time, making smart decisions. I mean, ultimately, the icing on the cake, we won the Super Bowl. We made it to the pinnacle, but you want to get back there now, and I think our work is definitely cut out for us because we're going to have some turnover to this roster, and we're going to have a good draft. We got a lot of draft picks, a lot going on here in the offseason. Next up, it's going to be re-signing players, then it's free agency, then the NFL draft, and then we head into season number 4. So that is going to do it for this episode, Season 3 over. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a like. I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to see any future videos that I make. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.